Today we're going to be talking about winter care for our houseplants. This is going to be your top 5 tips for your winter care guide on how to keep your plants doing just as well as they were doing in the summer and spring in the winter time. Welcome back to my channel, Plants and Teens. Thank you for joining me on on cue. On cue, Mia. What, you know you're cute, don't you? Love you. Thank you for joining me on my plant love journey. Whether you are completely obsessed already, like me, or you're on the other end of the spectrum where you're a planty newbie, just sticking your big toe in the water, or somewhere in between, this is a place for you. Guys, you can't do this every time I make my intro. Anyways, so with our house plants, we always want to try to simulate the environment that the plant is naturally from. And a lot of us have house plants that are from naturally a warmer or tropical climate, where we would kind of want to still simulate that in our home, and that's why they do so well in the summer and spring. And then some of us have plants that are, there are plants that are for winter, and then there are some that, are more acclimated to the desert type environment. So obviously with whatever plant you have personally in your home, it may require you to do a little more research on what exactly that plant needs, that you might need to tailor these tips. However, this is going to give you a baseline as to what you're going to need to take care of your plants in the wintertime. And if you are in a region of the world or the country like myself, where you experience all 4 seasons, where the winter hits hard, you're going to want to know what to do to protect your plants. So the basic things to take into consideration for your winter care is going to be, number 1, humidity level. Number 2, water intake. Number 3, the temperature of the environment that your plant is in. Sunlight. And then, of course, nutrients, which is kind of like a 5-ish. It's like we'll put an asterisk on that because it may or may not apply. It depends specifically on your plant. And that's going to be pretty easy to determine. So starting off with humidity, if you have a plant that is used to more humidity, not like a succulent or a cactus where they're used to the desert and drier weathers and they can kind of sort of do, without having as much humidity, you definitely want to increase the humidity in the wintertime in your home. So in the wintertime, the humidity is going to drop pretty low, and you're going to want your humidity in your homes to be around 50%. If you only have a few house plants, an easy way to make that adjustment for your plant is going to be to use the saucer that your pot may sit in. If you don't have one, you can purchase they're pretty reasonably priced, $1 or $2 for a saucer to put your planter on. And what you'll put in the saucer is just a bed of rocks with water. And when you sit your plant on that, it's going to leave that constant moisture. It'll be absorbed into the air around your plant so that it can take in the humidity and the water from the water at the base. Now, what you want to be careful with is you don't want the pot to be actually touching the water. You don't want it sitting in water constantly, because that can lead to root rot, and then you'll unfortunately lose the plant. And we don't want that. That's like the opposite of what we want to happen. So you need to line it with the rocks to lift it up so it's not going to sit in the water. So that's one thing you can do if you only have a few plants at home. And I'll show a clip on the side here of me placing that so you can see what it looks like, so you have an idea of what yours should look like at home. If you have more than a few plants, or you just have the disposable income, you can invest in a humidifier. The humidifier is going to be good for more of an area of plants. If you have an area in your home where you keep your plants, a humidifier might be good because it will take care of multiple plants at one time. And you can, adjust the level specifically. So if you do have a finicky plant or plant that's really sensitive to humidity, that might be a better option for you to get a humidifier. And you can use that to regulate the humidity. Another option, which is gonna be your most budget friendly option, but is also not the most reliable, but it still works. And that's gonna be to use the humidity that comes from the shower in your bathroom. So again, if you only have a few plants, 2 or 3 plants, and you have the room, you can permanently place your plants in the bathroom for the winter time so that it gets that humidity on a regular basis. Or if you just kind of want to give it a boost of humidity, maybe you're doing the rock method and you want to combine it with a day or two of putting it in your bathroom to get that humidity while you're showering, that's also very, very helpful. So that's another option. So those are some things that you can do to regulate the humidity for your plants in the winter time. And then next is going to be water intake. So for water, in the winter time, your plant will be using way less water. And that's because it's going to be growing way less. And there's less sunlight, which takes us into the next part. But before we jump over there, you want to water your plant less. You really, really want to pay attention to if it really needs water before you water it. Because again, too much water is going to lead to root rot. So for me, I use a moisture meter, which is really easy to pick up from Home Depot, Lowe's, Walmart, anywhere. You can get on Amazon, of course, and they're really inexpensive, about $12 to $13. If that's something you don't have access to, then definitely using your finger, sticking it in the pot. You want to stick it at least 1 to 1.5 inches down to know, because the top layer is always going to dry out faster than the rest, but that may not mean that the plant needs to be watered. So you really want to, if you're going to use your finger, you want to stick it far enough so that you can feel if the soil is moist or not. When you take your finger out, is there soil sticking to your finger, or does it just come right off? If it just comes right off, then it's probably dry. But if it's kind of caked on and sticking to your finger, the soil is probably still moist and it doesn't need to be watered. If determining that is a little too complicated to figure out, that's why I just got the moisture meter. If you were watering your plant, as a base rule of thumb, if you were watering your plant once a week in the summertime, do it once every 2 weeks in the wintertime, because it's not going to use that much water. Which takes us to our tip number 3, there's less sunlight. The sunlight is going to be hurting us like it's hurting me now as the sun is going down and I'm losing light on this video. So because the days are so much shorter in the winter time, we're going to need to compensate by either moving our plant or investing in a grow light. So if you had your plants kind of like on your counter or on your kitchen table, you might want to move it somewhere closer to the window. You don't really want to put it in the window, which we'll talk about with the next tip and temperature, but you want it to be closer to that sunlight. Or you can move it for the time of day that the sunlight really hits that window. So if you have an east facing window, in the morning time, that's when the sun is hidden. Move that plant there in the morning and move it, you might just have to move it around. If you only have a few plants, then that's feasible. If you have several plants like myself where that's not feasible, a grow light is going to be for you. There's levels to the grow lights, okay? So that is going to require a little more research, which I'll be doing a video on in the future on like a light guide, how you can determine what grow light you might need based on the amount of plants you have, based on the environment that you have. But that is going to be a good way to compensate for not having as much sunlight. And if you're doing propagations like myself, you will absolutely need a grow light, because even though the plants are not growing, your potted plants are not growing as much, your propagations like this one here, you'll be able to see, hopefully you can see that, is growing like crazy, okay? And I put a little, when I say a little, I mean a drop a fertilizer in here maybe a week ago, and there was not even a quarter of these roots. So, and this doesn't even have a grow light yet. So imagine, okay, you're gonna want to put grow lights for your propagations for sure, because they're seedlings, they're leaf cuttings, they're whatever, they need as much of everything as possible in order to make it through the winter. So that's going to be that for lighting and / location, which takes us into temperature. And in the winter, obviously the temperature is going to be a lot lower, and it may result, especially now when we're kind of transitioning into winter, the temperature fluctuates. Like yesterday it was 45 degrees, but the day before it was 25. So the plants are like, just like us, don't know what's going on, and the temperature change can be shocking for them. So whether that means you turning on the heat in your home because it just got really cold, and if your plant is right near the heater like mine's on the windowsill, that could cause a problem as well. So for me, like, I have my plants right in the window, and as it gets really cold, the window is going to be a drafty area, which is probably not going to be a good place for your plants. So you might want to get a small shelving area to put your plants maybe near the window so it gets the light, but not in the window so it doesn't get so much draft. Or if you have it near a heater, that's not going to be a good place either. You just don't want it to be near anywhere that can cause a drastic temperature change, especially on a daily basis. You want to have consistency with your plants. So that's for temperature. And then the last is for nutrients. So I said that this was an ish. We put an asterisk next to it because it truly depends on how your plant is doing. Because some plants, they really go dormant in the wintertime and they don't grow much at all in the wintertime. And that's not going to be a good time to fertilize them. Whereas we know the general basic rule is that growing season is from spring and summer, but plants grow in the fall and some plants will continue to grow in the winter. If your plant is growing, feed it. That's it. If it's growing, feed it. Let's give you an example. So I have this succulent growing like crazy. All of a sudden, she's gonna get fertilized because she's growing like crazy. Then I have another example, which I'll have to insert. I'll grab her and insert a picture or a video, a clip, is my Monstera. She was growing like crazy, and then it completely slowed down. It went from one to two leaves a week to these same two leaves, like in the same spot. They haven't budged. They're still just kind of like not quite unfurled for the past 2 weeks. So she's completely slowed down. So not going to fertilize that plant because she's completely slowed down. But then on the other hand, like my propagations or like my succulent, they will probably get just a little bit. And even if you're going to do it, but you're not sure, but you still want to do it, dilute it. Dilute it 2 times what it recommends to dilute it so that it's not going to be too strong to mess up the natural rhythm of your plant's growth cycle. So that's the thing with fertilizing, is to fertilize or not to fertilize. All depends on what your plant is doing. So I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's everything. So if you made it to the end, thank you so much for joining me in this video. I hope that these tips were helpful for you. And if you're plan on using any of these tips, or you're already doing these things, or you have a tip that I didn't mention, please mention it in the comment box below. I would love to hear your comments. And we can have a nice little discussion about our plants for the winter. Bye.